One of the great things that happens when people come together to play music is they make a decision, a kind of faith-based decision, that they're going to build something together. And one of the things that's really great about music is there's not a house, there's not a car, you're not building anything tangible, there's nothing you can sell. You really are just coming together to make this disturbance in the ether together, and you believe it has value, you form this little community. So in a way, there are lots of other communities that get formed. There are communities that go to sporting events, or communities that go do political things, communities that do good, do bad. The thing about music is it doesn't really do anything, right? And so in that way, it's sort of the most noble of those communities, because there isn't an object, there isn't a goal, there isn't we're going to all march on Washington and tell everybody how unhappy we are about gun control or whatever. It's like there's no tangible thing that happens, and so in that way, one of the best things that comes out of music is that people have come together to do it. And once you start thinking that way, you start thinking how great it would be to design a doorway that's so large that lots of people could come together to do this. And most of my music is really hard, and I work with really great players, and I write really hard things for them to play. And that, on the one hand, is fantastic because I feel like I have a great relationship with really talented, incredible musicians. But it also means that from the community building side, from the let's believe that building something noble is noble, from that side, it limits the number of people you can work with. And so in the last several years, I've started working on these projects which are aimed at amateurs or aimed at ordinary people. And they're not aimed at ordinary people the way flash mobs are made, or something where we just say, show up and do what you want to do and it'll be great. I feel like one of the things that makes this community come together in music is rehearsal, is that people get together and they decide that there's a right way and a wrong way to do something, and they challenge themselves to try to do that. And that power of challenging yourself to do something is an action which everyone does and everyone needs. And so I started thinking, if you can build these projects where people need to get together to rehearse, they do the same thing that the New York Philharmonic does, or the Santa Fe Opera or whatever. They all get together and rehearse to make this thing. Then they can have, ordinary people can have the same experience that these high-level musicians do. Mm-hmm. So I did a piece for a consortium in England and Europe, the Birmingham Contemporary Ensemble, the London Symphony Education Department, and the Berlin Philharmonic Educational Department, called Crowd Out, where I did a piece for 1,000 amateur people from the community yelling, basically, So there's whispering and talking and a little singing and, a little noise making, but basically it's yelling. And I didn't know what to do. It's really hard. People had to rehearse, they had to get together. It was really fun. It was really fantastic. And I really got kind of the bug about how to do these more community-based projects. So I did one for, I've done many, many, many of these. I won't even go into them. There's a big one for Lincoln Center, the public domain for 1,000 amateur singers. The one I did this past year was a piece for all the broken musical instruments in the Philadelphia public school system. And again, this was a project where people came to me and they said, we have access to these instruments and we're not totally sure we know what to do with them. Other than that they knew that they wanted to do something musical, and they knew they wanted to raise the money to repair them and get them back into the schools. So I really helped to design this project so that ordinary people could do it, so that the audience, who was in the audience, looked like the people who go to the public schools. Who was playing in the ensemble was everything from members of the Philadelphia Orchestra down to students in the public schools in Philadelphia, and everyone in between. And I made a kind of music that was difficult for them, that required rehearsal, but did not require rehearsal in a normal way because the instruments, of course, were unable to play normally. So for me, this was a problem that was really great because you were able to build this community of people for their own community to work with these instruments, which were themselves an act of faith. You know, you had to believe that this shell of an instrument was capable of creating music in order for you to be able to create music with it. And to me, that was one of the more beautiful things.
That's amazing. And so you really probably felt that real sense of community coming around that.
Yeah, everybody felt like, well, there were a bunch of aspects of community which I thought were really interesting. And one of them was the musical part, that people built this thing together and it sounded amazing. And I set everyone up in the space. We did it in a big armory, and I designed the layout of the seats so that everyone in the audience is facing outward, and the orchestra surrounds the members of the audience. There's a conductor in the middle, but they can't see that. You know, the audience, it's behind the audience. And the whole point of that was, when we see classical music, we're used to having someone give orders, right? We're used to seeing, you know, everyone follows this one person, but that's not a very community-spirited thing. So I really wanted to push the audience and the performers very close together so that you would be able to see as an audience member just how damaged this instrument was. But the larger part of the community thing, which was both really beautiful and also really irritating and really upsetting, is to realize that there are things that we need in our society that maybe at some time we used to have in our society, you know, a sense that we are connected to each other and we are responsible for each other and we have obligations to each other, and some of those are just our civic way of dealing with each other, and some of them have to do with funding public schools, and some of them have to do with the decision to even send children to public schools. You know, that this fight is going on is a fight of real racial and economic divide in our country. And so the idea that it takes a heroic action for people to come together to just have musical instruments repaired in their school is, on the one hand, beautiful that this community came to do it, but it also was very upsetting to me, and very it made me, the whole project made me inspired and angry in equal measures. I am a musician because there were instruments in the public schools when I was a kid. You know, my parents were not interested in it at all. There was no music in my life. The only reason why I am a musician is because there were instruments in the school for me to borrow, and there was a music program, and I could take advantage of that. And taking advantage of that made me a better person and changed my life. And to see that these instruments are not able to do that for the kids in those schools is a tragedy. So it's a very beautiful thing that people came together to do this. And you could feel, I think, in the room, the sense that people were really proud of the fact that they stood up to solve this one problem. But we have a lot of problems like that, and we can't stand up to solve all of them if everything else in our society is broken.
Yeah. You're such an inspiration for me, and many others I know, but just on how to use our musical voice to create a better situation or to improve a situation, and to bring people together in that way is really inspiring.
Well, it's something we can do. It's not something we have to do. It's not something we're obligated to do, and I don't blame anybody who doesn't want to do it. And as I say, I sort of backed into it. I never intended to be a community musician. I never intended to become someone who would be the advocate for this thing. But part of it was that I sort of stumbled onto this way of making music kind of by accident. And also it came at a time when it seemed like I was politically angry enough to want to do something about it.